Amidst the stark realities of the Great Depression, American communities in the mill towns of Massachusetts found unique solace and spirit in the burgeoning sport of ski racing. In places like Adams, where economic hardship bit deep, the mountains offered not just a physical challenge but a psychological escape. Moonlight practices on the formidable slopes of Mount Greylock, its dark and foreboding presence visible for miles, drew young men who shivered in the cold, shouldering their 7-foot hickory skis. This shared pursuit, often with primitive homemade equipment, forged a powerful bond among the Adams men, creating a sense of shared pride and camaraderie that transcended the daily struggle for survival. Local businesses like Art Simmons's furniture store became silent partners in this dream, providing the affordable gear that kept the sport alive and accessible. From this working-class crucible emerged Rudy Konechny, born in 1918, a natural skier whose dedication bordered on obsession. His younger brother Adolf would recall Rudy as a perpetual seeker of the next big thrill, but incredibly intense and happy when skiing. Friends like Lester Horton marveled that Rudy skied like water flowing over a waterfall, a testament to his innate talent and great style. Rudy, who sacrificed mill work to train relentlessly on the Thunderbolt Trail, scaling Mount Greylock multiple times a day, became a local hero, Motorcycle BIT. And credibly, he didn't race for glory alone, but for the sheer love of it, an intense focus that excluded steady girlfriends or cultural pursuits. His meteoric rise was cemented on January 16, 1938, when he set a new Thunderbolt course record. A triumph that resonated deeply with his community, who saw in him a symbol of their own resilience and hope. Yet, this distinctly American narrative of individual aspiration soon collided with a darker, more ominous global reality. Later that same month, the arrival of the German university's skiing team in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, cast a chilling shadow. These elite athletes, resplendent in sweaters emblazoned with the German eagle and the Nazi swastika, brought with them not only superior equipment and training, but also the chilling arrogance of state-sponsored propaganda. Their flawless practice runs on the Thunderbolt, effortlessly shattering Rudy's hard-won record, sent a wave of intimidation through the American competitors. Rudy, shaken, confided in a friend, "Geez, Greenie, I don't even feel like racing. We can't beat these guys." The presence of the Nazi flag, later seen at other events, was a stark and unsettling harbinger of the larger global conflicts that would soon engulf their world. As the shadow of World War II lengthened, the carefree era of competitive skiing began to recede. Rudy Konechny's competitive season and immediate Olympic dreams met an abrupt end in March 1940, with a fractured leg on a Thunderbolt training run, followed a week later by a similar injury to his co-captain, Greenie Gertin. Adolf Konechny remembered it as the end of a very special time, a personal setback that mirrored the profound global shift. With Germany on a rampage, and Japan doing the same, the inevitability of US involvement became palpable. Young men like Rudy, seeing international sports cancelled and the world spiraling into conflict, began to reevaluate their priorities. Rather than await the draft, they chose to enlist, seeking preferred branches of service. By the summer of 1940, recruitment drives intensified, and on September 25th, headlines announced that skiing star Rudy Konechny would join the Army's Coast Artillery Unit, a definitive end to his racing career, and the disbanding of the ski runners of Adams. As Phil Puchner, a fellow skier, would later reflect, nobody really cared how someone fared in a ski race. Everybody's mind was correctly refocused on other matters. We still loved to ski, but we had another job to do, and it was time to go do it. For Jacob Jake Nanamaker, from a privileged Milwaukee background, the path to national service was marked by a different kind of internal struggle. His formative years, influenced by 2 years in the Bavarian Alps, had instilled a lifelong love for snow and mountains. Returning to the US, he quickly became a superb sailor, iceboater, and skier. Remembered by his girlfriend Jean as flying on the snow, he flourished at Dartmouth, a bastion of collegiate skiing, even as the world outside grew increasingly turbulent. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, thrust the United States into war, presenting Jake with a profound moral dilemma. While many immediately volunteered, Jake chose to remain at Dartmouth to fulfill his academic duties and captain his ski team. He later admitted this decision caused him some embarrassment, but he understood the historical significance of upholding the traditions of the organizations he led under such difficult circumstances. This period of intense self-reflection, blending passion, responsibility, and an unwavering moral compass, laid the groundwork for his future contributions of the organizations and transmitted. Jean, his fiancée, recalled how any initial delusion that life still might go on as usual quickly dissolved into fear, yet in communities like Pine Lake, despite their German-American population, strong anti-fascist sentiments prevailed, and over 50 young men, including Jake, joined the military, definitively debunking any myths of Nazi sympathy in the area. The pre-war era, though focused on the thrill and camaraderie of sport, had subtly laid the groundwork for a new kind of service. The discipline, resilience, and profound connection to the mountains cultivated by skiers like Rudy Konechny and Jake Nunemacher would soon be called upon for national duty. Their passion for what Otto Schneebs called, not a sport, it is a way of life, would be transformed into the very skills needed for the unique challenges of mountain warfare, as the nation geared up to confront the growing fascist threat. The carefree days of hurtling down snow-covered slopes were over. A different, far more perilous descent awaited. The world was ablaze, and the United States, having watched the horrors of Europe and Asia unfold, felt a chilling vulnerability in a landscape it had long considered a playground, the mountains. The Finnish army's stunning, defiant stand against the Soviet Union in their snow-covered forests, employing ski troops in white camouflage, had served as a stark, undeniable lesson. Winter warfare was a specialized art, and America was unprepared. Into this strategic void stepped Charles Minot, Minnie Dole, the tireless founder and chairman of the National Ski Patrol. Dole, a man whose passion for skiing was matched only by his patriotic zeal, hammered away at the War Department, tirelessly lobbying for a dedicated American ski force. He saw the nation's wealth of civilian skiers and mountaineers not as hobbyists, but as an untapped military asset. His persistence paid off. In July 1940, Dole offered the NSP's assistance, and eventually, Army Chief of Staff General George Marshall, recognizing the urgent need, authorized the formation of specialized ski patrol units. It was a crucial turning point, transforming a recreational pursuit into a military imperative. The formal activation of the 87th Mountain Regiment in late 1941 was just the beginning. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, shattered any remaining illusions of American neutrality, galvanizing the nation and intensifying the demand for every military branch to rapidly expand. The call went out, but for these units, it wasn't just for any soldier. They sought the most exceptional individuals, seasoned skiers, hardened mountaineers, many already natural leaders. This unique recruitment, drawing prima donnas from the slopes and trails, fostered an unconventional, almost egalitarian ethos. As one veteran would later reflect, "I never met a son of a bitch with a couple of stars I thought was better than me," a testament to the shared mastery of skills that often transcended rank. This was a force where a private could teach a colonel how to survive a blizzard, where racial and religious divides, so prevalent elsewhere in the segregated army, were largely dissolved in the common pursuit of mountain survival. Native American and Jewish soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, united by the snow and the shared mission. Colorado's Camp Hale, nestled in the vast, inspiring expanse of the Rockies, became the division's crucible. Established in September 1942 as a dedicated mountain warfare instructional facility, it was a sprawling complex, a city of redwood barracks and mess halls, chapels and hospitals, mule stables and rifle ranges, even an artificial glacier. This was no ordinary military base. It was the Switzerland of America, a place designed to forge soldiers from athletes. The sheer, breathtaking beauty of the surrounding peaks was undeniable, a constant, inspiring backdrop that would imprint itself on the men, shaping their post-war aspirations. Friedel Pfeiffer, arriving after a long march, looked up at Ajax Mountain and felt an overwhelming sense of my future before me. A future that would intertwine with the very landscape he was learning to conquer. When the relentless training offered a brief reprieve, the primitive mining town of Aspen, a 4-hour winter journey away, became a vital sanctuary, with its ice cream scoop hills and aspen cruds offering a potent, if temporary, escape from the rigors of military life. Yet to mistake Camp Hale for a government-sponsored ski vacation or a country club was a profound misjudgment. Life was basic, with soldiers sleeping on mattresses made of corn cobs. The air, though thin, could be thick with coal smoke, leading to the infamous Pando hack. The training was grueling, designed to push men to their absolute physical and mental limits. The legendary 90 pounds of rucksack training became a symbol of the unit's fortitude. Men, some weighing barely 120 pounds themselves, would shoulder packs so heavy they often needed a second man to help them stand if they fell. Trooper Jeddy Brooks recalled the ascent as very slowly, a testament to the immense strain. Captain Paul Lafferty, an inspirational leader, secretly added rocks to his own pack during mountain climbs, determined to keep fit for combat loads, setting an example of extreme dedication. This brutal conditioning, however, was balanced by the unique camaraderie and dark humour that flourished. The regimental glee club, led by Ralph Bramagin, a gifted guitarist and arranger, played a crucial role. Their bawdy, rough songs, often parodies of popular tunes, became part of the unit's initiation rites, building morale and cohesion. Bromogin's humorous impersonations of instructors like Otto Lang and Friedel Pfeiffer, poking fun at their holier-than-thou attitudes, reinforced the egalitarian spirit, reminding everyone that even in the toughest moments, laughter was a weapon. The division's first taste of deployment, however, was a jarring transition, from the high-altitude training grounds to the desolate fog-shrouded Aleutian Islands. In June 1943, the 87th Regiment, including Rudy Konieczny, received orders to Fort Ord, California, then shipped out to Adak, Alaska, before embarking on the Kiska invasion. It was a brutal and surrealistic introduction to life and death in the combat zone. Kiska was a nightmare of dense fog, bitter rain, and brutal winds, where visibility was often non-existent. The ultimate tragedy was that there was no Japanese enemy present. Due to poor intelligence and communication, the invasion became a devastating friendly fire incident. Soldiers, ordered to shoot at unidentified figures in the mist, tragically killed nearly 24 of their own. Captain George Earle grimly summarized the experience. The enemy on Kiska was Kiska. The psychological toll was profound. Soldier Stan Gosnay bravely defied an order to fire on shadows, realizing they were likely his own men, preventing further casualties. Amidst the chaos, Rudy Konieczny, ever the humorist, managed to lighten the mood. Joking that when his children asked what he did in the war, he'd say, "I policed up Kiska some," but beneath the gallows humour lay the deep-seated regret and trauma of killing comrades in the fog. After the grim absurdity of Kiska, a new blow to morale arrived. In the summer and autumn of 1944, the 10th Mountain Division, honed for alpine combat, was sent to Camp Swift near Austin, Texas, for flatland infantry training. It was, for these mountain men, a version of hell. The 110-degree heat, unrelenting desert conditions, and choking dust were the antithesis of everything they had trained for. Soldiers, previously among the best conditioned in the army, collapsed from heatstroke after just a few miles of marching with full packs. Frank Praisnar recounted the brutal reality. Morale plummeted, wounded pride giving way to serious and growing concern. The men feared the division, so uniquely formed and meticulously trained, would be broken up, its specialized skills discarded, and its members sent as replacements to other units. John Nunemaker noted the widespread anxiety, though some wives, in their secret hearts, welcomed the possibility of their husbands avoiding deployment to a combat zone. Yet, despite the frustrating lack of a clear combat mission for an extended period, the 10th Mountain Division, through its rigorous training at Camp Hale, the shared trauma of Kiska, and even the demoralizing heat of Camp Swift, had been forged into an exceptionally conditioned and skilled fighting force. They were ready. The ultimate test, though delayed and fraught with uncertainty, now awaited them on the scarred slopes of Italy. The sun-drenched beaches of Italy, once envisioned as Europe's soft underbelly, a swift, decisive thrust into the Axis heartland, had instead become a protracted, agonizing grind. The campaign, often overshadowed by the titanic struggles in France and on the Eastern Front, was a forgotten theatre. Yet its human cost was staggering. This brutal reality was, in no small part, exacerbated by the controversial decisions of American Fifth Army Commander General Mark Clark. His desire for personal glory, the lure of Rome, had famously overridden General Alexander's strategic directives to cut off retreating German forces at Valmontone. This tactical error allowed the enemy south of Rome to escape destruction, regroup, and fortify the formidable Apennine Mountains. Clark's subsequent triumphal march past the Colosseum, though a symbolic victory, proved Pyrrhic. The Italian campaign devolved into a gruesome year-long trek through what seemed like the Nazi digestive tract, inflicting tens of thousands of casualties on Allied forces and debunking any myth of a quick, easy victory. By the fall of 1944, the Allied offensive had stalled, bleeding men and resources against the heavily entrenched German Winter Line. This defensive network, woven into the rugged, unforgiving peaks of the Apennines, seemed impregnable. Repeated, brutal assaults by understrength combat groups on key positions like Mount Belvedere were brutally routed, leaving shattered Allied tanks and armaments littering its slopes. The Fifth Army divisions were severely depleted, their men exhausted, and slipping toward a complete breakdown. The stalemate was not just a military quagmire. It carried significant geopolitical weight, with the US and UK desperate to advance into northern Italy and Austria before the Soviet Red Army could. It was into this desperate, costly stalemate that the 10th Mountain Division was finally deployed, a last resort to break a line that had consumed so many. After months of frustrating uncertainty and training that often felt disconnected from a clear mission, these mountain men were now on their way. Yet their arrival on the bloody Italian front was not met with universal welcome. A prevailing sentiment among veterans who had endured months, sometimes years of fierce fighting, was that it was time for the 10th Mountain Division to do its fair share. There was an implied skepticism, perhaps even animosity, from battle-hardened infantrymen who had seen their comrades fall, now watching a division of ski troops arrive. The journey to the front was a jarring transition. From the broken-down freighter converted into a troop ship to unheated railroad cars traversing the cold, devastated Italian countryside, Christmas Eve found the 86th Regiment docking in war-torn Naples, a city scarred by conflict, followed by the rest of the division in January 1945. Amidst the desolation, moments of profound humanity emerged. The soldiers encountered widespread poverty and starvation, particularly among the children. A small army of hungry youngsters would gather, and division members, like Private Louis Holscher, recalled the simple yet impactful act of handing out food, setting up informal distribution systems. Staff Sergeant Jake Nunemacher, whose training had instilled in him a deep sense of compassion, found himself communicating with these Italian civilians, often through gestures and a few phrases of German or Italian he'd picked up. These interactions, fleeting yet poignant, offered a stark contrast to the grim reality of the war, a brief connection to the humanity they were fighting to protect. However, the initial deployment itself proved a stark and somewhat ironic challenge to the division's specialized training. Though designed for alpine warfare, the drier-than-normal winter in the mountains of northern Italy meant their unique skills were not immediately applicable. Wooden skis, for instance, made too much noise moving over ice and breakable crust. Instead of agile ski patrols, they were plunged into a brutal static meat grinder and snow. The absolutely gorgeous alpine terrain offered little time for reflection on natural wonders, as they were immediately tasked with probing the enemy in the area below Mount Belvedere, a mission that quickly turned perilous as a mine incident within the first week near Livorno killed 7 troopers and a chaplain. The 10th Mountain Division, honed for swift, specialized operations, found themselves in a tougher assignment, thrown into the very kind of grueling conventional infantry warfare they were supposedly designed to circumvent, tasked with breaking German strongholds that were key to the defense of northern Italy. Their unique training, however, had forged them into an exceptionally conditioned and resilient force, qualities that would soon be tested beyond imagination. The sun-drenched beaches of Italy, once envisioned as Europe's soft underbelly, had instead become a protracted, agonizing grind. By the fall of 1944, the Allied offensive had stalled, bleeding men and resources against a German winter line that seemed impregnable, particularly atop Mount Belvedere, a massive stronghold that had brutally routed every previous assault. The Fifth Army was exhausted, their divisions depleted, and the GOSAMS with the US, now offering the DMSs against a German winter line that beings, and UK desperate to advance into northern Italy and Austria. It was into this desperate quagmire that the 10th Mountain Division, honed for alpine combat, was finally deployed. General Lucien K. Truscott Jr., the new commander of the American Fifth Army, devised an audacious plan. He recognized Riva Ridge, a steep, icy 2,000-foot peak, as the critical key to unlocking Mount Belvedere. Its dominant observation and fire control made it the linchpin. Truscott's strategic pivot to prioritize Riva Ridge was a turning point, a gamble that would either break the stalemate or consume the last hopes of the Italian front. The planning for the assault on Riva Ridge was meticulous, a clandestine operation shrouded in secrecy and danger. reconnaissance missions in January 1945 confirmed the formidable nature of the German defences and identified 5 incredibly difficult climbing routes. Tensions mounted as troops moved silently under the cover of night to the base of the ridge, hidden in buildings and defiled. Discovery meant instant death. On February 5, 1945, a patrol skirmish yielded the division's first prisoner of war, a small victory that underscored the enemy's close proximity. The night of February 18, 1945, marked the beginning of one of the most audacious mountain warfare actions in history. Before moving out, members of the 86th Regiment gathered in a cramped attic, their breath fogging in the cold air. Sergeant Jack Parker recalled kneeling with men of various faiths, including Austrian-born mountaineer Private Ferdinand Lebrecht, in one of the most silent, fervent prayers he had ever experienced. Every man knew it was going to be rough on the mountain. Silently, the troops emerged into the freezing night, beginning their perilous ascent of Riva Ridge. It was a tense movement up icy slopes and frozen waterfalls, aided by a dense fog that obscured their approach, ensuring that the discovery of a single soldier could jeopardize the entire operation. At dawn, leveraging their specialized skills, the 10th Mountaineers emerged from the fog, surprising and overwhelming the Nazi defenders, the Pickles Bay approach and soldier. The capture of Riva Ridge was successful, but the cost was immediate, with fierce enemy counterattacks following swiftly. The success on Riva Ridge made the subsequent assault on Mount Belvedere possible. On the evening of February 19, 1945, Sergeant Jacob Nunemacher's Company 87 Bravo marched to its jump-off point, while Sergeant Rudy Konechny's 87 Fox Company moved into position. The initial plan for a surprise attack on Belvedere, however, quickly unraveled when an unexpected minefield shattered the element of surprise, unleashing a devastating storm of Nazi fire. Amidst the chaos, Rudy Konechny, a man of legendary courage, made extraordinary use of 2 Browning automatic rifles simultaneously, laying down covering fire that protected his exposed men. Sergeant Jacob Nunemacher, guided by T5 Bob Parker and accompanied by Private Louis Holscher, crawled for hours over the freezing ground, meticulously feeling for mines, miraculously reaching his objective with no men killed. But the fight for Belvedere rapidly escalated in brutality. German deception tactics, including feigned surrenders, claimed the life of Sergeant William E. Murphy, prompting Company C to refuse to take prisoners. Medics and litter-bearers, universally respected under the rules of war, were intentionally targeted, leading to horrific injuries that stripped away any remaining illusions of chivalry. Trooper Dan Kennelly would forever recall the smell of blood, an odor of a slaughterhouse, gripping him with a profound fear and sickness as he realized the terrible nature of infantry warfare. The immense human cost was palpable. One soldier, having lost a foot, considered himself lucky to be going home, seeing those still fighting as the unlucky ones. This brutality, coupled with the desperate German defense of the Winter Line, hardened the American resolve, stripping away pre-war confidence and replacing it with a grim, unyielding determination. The psychological toll was profound, exemplified by Sergeant Dennis Noonan, who would carry the lifelong agony of being ordered to execute 6 German POWs. The division pressed its advance, pushing beyond Belvedere to Mount Gorgolesco. Here, the horrors continued. Sergeant Hugh Evans, who earned a Silver Star in the fighting, witnessed a scene of quiet, devastating grief as Eugene Savage confronted the mutilated body of his brother, Irv Savage. The war was not just a strategic game. It was an intimate, visceral tragedy. The next major assault was Mount della Torraccia. On February 21st, Lieutenant Colonel John Stone led the 2nd Battalion of the 85th onto the peak, receiving the grim, stark order to attack until your battalion is expended. Nazi tree bursts, shells detonating in the treetops to maximize shrapnel spread, decimated Stone's troops, who were quickly low on ammunition and food, struggling to care for numerous casualties. On February 24th, the 86th attacked Della Torraccia at dawn. In a moment of high tension and bravery, Captain Ralph Bramagin, a complicated giant of a skier, musician and watercolorist, and now leading the 3rd Battalion of the 86th on the division's right flank, crossed open ground under heavy shelling to save his wounded friend, Captain Duke Watson. The fighting on Della Torraccia was costly, a relentless grind against a dug-in and desperate enemy, but by sunrise on February 26, 1945, the Nazi shelling had nearly subsided, marking the 10th Mountain Division's first decisive victory. These battles, while consuming hundreds of lives and leaving countless wounded, effectively broke the German winter line in the Apennines. The division, initially confident in its specialized skills, was transformed by the experience. As Trooper Harry Poshman succinctly put it, "We were just a damn ski club until we got the shit shot out of us in Italy." They had accomplished feats previously considered impossible, paving the way for further Allied advances, despite the persistent sideshow perception of the Italian campaign by higher command. The cost was immense, the scars deep, but the line was broken. The final weeks of the Italian campaign were a brutal, costly, and often strategically perplexing bloodbath for the 10th Mountain Division. Even as the war neared its end, General Mark Clark, commander of the American Fifth Army, remained fixated on personal glory and the need to justify the immense sacrifices already made in Italy. Driven by this ambition, and with assurances to his superior General Alexander that an offensive would help prevent the spread of communism into northern Italy, Clark pushed for a final decisive thrust. This decision largely ignored the fact that secret surrender discussions with SS General Karl Wolff had already debunked the redoubt theory of a fortified German stronghold in the Alps. The National Redoubt, a formidable claim touted by Dr. Goebbels' propaganda machine, was a phantom, yet the battles for it were very real. The strategic necessity for such a costly offensive was questionable, especially as American troops had already reached the Elbe River, nearing Berlin by April 11th. On the ground, the soldiers of the 10th Mountain Division grappled with the psychological and physical toll of prolonged warfare. The relentless combat continued to take its toll, even after the brutal fighting for Casteldiano. Though the division had seized the objective, it came at a cost of over 600 casualties in just 4 days, hardening their resolve, but also diminishing any inclination to offer quarter. Amidst this, the division mourned the tragic friendly fire deaths of Sergeant Torger Tockler, a U.S. ski-jumping champion, and Private Arthur Tockler, whose bazooka shells were struck by a short round from distant American artillery. Their horrendous, ear-shattering blast was a profound shock and loss, yet even in their sacrifice, the advance continued. The impending offensive, however, was momentarily halted by a different kind of shockwave. The news of President Roosevelt's death on April 13th. This caused a postponement, creating a period of reflection, uncertainty, and rumor among the troops. The news about the president was very traumatic for a lot of the guys, one veteran recalled. Most of us were really just kids, and the death of the commander-in-chief shook us up a bit. Despite the warmer weather and flowers sprouting on the mountainsides, the high peaks to the southwest, once home to ski resorts, now served as a stark reminder of a lost peace. For some, the war's end couldn't come soon enough. Rudy Konieczny, severely wounded in the arms, side and leg, during the Casteldiano offensive, found the hospital routine excruciatingly dull, climbing the walls with boredom. Despite being given the option to go home, he refused, his commitment to his comrades unwavering. By early April, his mood fluctuating, he simply escaped the hospital, hitchhiking back to the front lines on a truck. His unit wasn't surprised. "Considering that it was Rudy, I'd have to say, no, we weren't," one man remarked, a testament to his legendary dedication. But for many, the fight continued. Staff Sergeant Jake Nunemaker, a meticulous and respected squad leader, found himself facing the last great battle with a mutual feeling of dread that permeated the ranks. On April 13, 1945, just hours before the main offensive, Nunemaker took a calculated risk. After German prisoners had surrendered, he entered a building alone and was struck by a single rifle shot from a sniper, later identified as a rabid Nazi SS soldier. His comrades, including Louis Holscher, who was just feet away, were devastated. Sergeant John Sugden and Private Leon Burrows, injured by the same sniper, were gripped by profound grief and rage. Burrows considered Nunemaker like a brother, and Sugden vowed vengeance for his friend. Jake, who had longed for home, envisioning crawling into that square bed of ours and staying there for days, became another poignant casualty of a war that was almost over. On April 14, 1945, at 8:30 a.m., the go order was given for the main spring offensive. The 10th Mountain Division was designated to spearhead the 5th Army's charge into the Po Valley. The initial assault on Torre Giussi proved to be a near-suicidal objective, with an entire German division committed to its defense. As Company 87 Bravo advanced down an exposed road, they were met with a thunder of fire and numerous casualties. German snipers and machine gunners fired from every building. Jake Nunemaker, moments before his death, had been leading his men, dodging bullets to reach the side of the first building, tossing a hand grenade through a window, and demanding surrender. This offensive, driven by questionable strategic decisions and General Clark's personal ambition, became the bloodiest phase of the campaign and a bloodbath for the 10th Mountain Division, epitomizing needless gallantry. April 14, 1945 became the division's single worst day of combat, with well over 500 casualties in a 12-hour battle. The road to Torre Giusi was a grim sight, with ditches filled with American dead, many blown in half, and parts of mules scattered everywhere. Future Senate Majority Leader Lieutenant Bob Dole was severely wounded by shrapnel, losing the use of his right arm, and world-class ski racer Friedel Pfeiffer was also severely wounded, losing part of his lung. The relentless combat continued. Company L's 2nd Platoon, just 40 men, found themselves fighting alone on Banzai Ridge in a swirling, disorienting fog after the 86th Regiment failed to advance on schedule. This resulted in a desperate Banzai charge, securing the objective but at a devastating cost of 30 killed or wounded. Throughout these intense operations, Captain Joe Duncan, commander of Company L, emerged as an extraordinary leader whose humanity and courage were widely praised. His radioman, Private Ol Soria, noted how the stress of combat visibly aged him, transforming him from a figure resembling Gary Cooper into an aging warrior with a burdened countenance. "Soria, you and I are not made for this war," acknowledging the horrific reality that the captain knew we were living an experience that would haunt us for the rest of our lives, while a contentious memoir later alleged that Duncan, at his battalion commander's direction, ordered the execution of German POWs, veterans like Bruce Behrens, John called. And Albert Soria vehemently disputed this. They asserted it was totally out of character for Duncan, who consistently took prisoners, reinforcing his reputation as a leader of the highest moral character. Despite devastating losses, the 10th Mountain Division achieved a rapid and decisive advance. On April 20, 1945, they broke through to the Po Valley. This was a turning point, but it was followed by a strategic disagreement. General Clark, commander of the 5th Army, ordered a halt to allow other units to catch up, potentially giving the Germans time to regroup. However, General Truscott, recognizing the momentum, encouraged General Terhub, commander of the 10th Mountain Division, to continue the offensive, famously stating, "This is no time to relax, George." Hayes seized this as a revised order, launching a rapid and decisive drive across northern Italy, liberating towns and preventing the Germans from establishing further defenses, though it was exhausting for his troops. General Clark, despite his earlier decisions, would later call the 10th Mountain Division the finest Army Division I have ever seen. The division achieved significant battlefield success, liberating towns but at an exceptionally high cost in lives and injuries, with April 14th being their single worst day of combat. The profound psychological impact of war, the intense camaraderie, and the ultimate futility of death when peace was so near were stark realities. The war's end brought no immediate respite from tragedy. On April 30th, 1945, just hours before Adolf Hitler's death, Colonel William Darby, founder of the USF, Colonel William Darby, founder of the U.S. Time, Army Ranger Program, and Sergeant Major John Evans were killed near Lake Garda by artillery fire. Mere days before the official Nazi surrender in Italy on May 2nd and VE Day on May 8th, 2nd and VE Day on May 8th. The tragic irony of late war casualties, dying in the shadow of victory, underscored the immense human cost of the final offensive. The war's end, so eagerly anticipated, brought with it a cruel paradox for countless American families. For those whose sons, husbands, or brothers had fallen in the final, desperate days of fighting, the news arrived not as a relief, but as a fresh, agonizing wound. The full sense of security that followed VE Day made the subsequent casualty notifications twisting the knife of grief into an already raw sorrow. These Gold Star families, their lives irrevocably altered, bore an immense personal grief and lasting trauma. The unfulfilled potential of individuals like Jacob Nunemaker and Rudy Conestini, whose contributions to science, art, or simply the fabric of their communities were cut short, represented an unquantifiable loss to a society already reeling. War, in its most intimate and tragic form, was never an abstract concept. It was the shattered dreams and aspirations returned as precious cargo in a flag-draped coffin. Jacob, one of over 50 young men from Pine Lake who served, was the only one not to return, a stark statistic that spoke volumes of individual sacrifice. Yet for those who survived, the end of the war in Europe, and subsequently the Pacific, marked a profound turning point. The dropping of atomic bombs on Japan, while a horrific tragedy in itself, averted a potentially devastating invasion of the Japanese mainland, undoubtedly saving the lives of countless American soldiers, including many from the 10th Mountain Division, who were slated for that fight. They returned home, not as the carefree athletes they once were, but as men forever changed. Forged by intense combat, the shared trauma of Kiska, and the brutal grind of the Apennines. Their experiences, however harrowing, had also solidified an extraordinary brotherhood, a bond forged in frozen foxholes and under enemy fire. Even in Italy, amidst the desolation and the fighting, they had found fleeting moments of respite, glimpses of humanity and beauty that reminded them of the life they were fighting to preserve, as Carlton Miller, a veteran of the Manichates of Fighting to Preserve, would recall of their post-surrender opportunity to climb and ski in the Italian Dolomites and Austrian Alps. Not even the army could kill my love for the mountains, coupled with the unique skills and resilience honed by their wartime experiences, became the wellspring of a powerful and lasting influence on American society. The boys of winter channeled their collective energy into new endeavors, profoundly shaping the American landscape and culture. The development of American skiing, often seen as a civilian pursuit, was, in fact, significantly propelled by the passion and expertise of these military personnel. Veterans like Friedel Pfeiffer, Pete Seibert, and Percy Rideout, among some 2,000 others, became pioneers, founding, directing, or managing over 60 American ski resorts, transforming towns like Aspen and Vail from sleepy mining outposts into world-renowned destinations. Their influence extended far beyond the ski slopes, with figures like David Brower becoming a towering force in the environmental movement, and Bob Dole rising to lead the United States Senate. By 1948, 5 members of the division were on the U.S. ski team, a testament to their continued athletic prowess. Even at the remarkable age of 92, Professor Bradley, one of Jake Nunemaker's early mentors, was still observed whooping it up as he skied off-piste, embodying the enduring passion and vitality of these mountain soldiers. The division's legacy, preserved through its history, veterans organizations, and the continued influence of its members on outdoor pursuits, stands as a powerful and moving testament to their heroism and sacrifice, reminding us that a nation without history is one without conscience, and ultimately one without a soul.